you, but you ended up applying for a DOPPSR. I think our audience might be confused. They might think that this is somehow an authorized interview and that there are people in the Defense Department pulling the strings, telling you what to say, and that this is some kind of disinformation operation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, but for what it's worth, I can tell you that's not the case. I mean, the DOPPSR process is very interesting. It's way more casual, especially on the onset, than you might think. When you take into account the ramifications for violating the mandates that come out of it and the subject matter that it's supposedly protecting. But they get put in a really tough spot, and this is part of something we aimed to take advantage of, I guess you could say, by interrogating the DOPPSR system. One of the things I haven't shared yet is in our effort to find out who we were looking for, one of the ways we came up with on how to do that was to query for who might want to redact statements we intended to go public with through DOPPSR.
So you filed, I think, a fictionalized account of some of your experiences to DOPPSR.
Yeah, so any author or anybody that's going to be contributing to an author to put something in writing or to share it orally like this has to go through the DOPPSR process. If you ever held a security clearance working for a government agency in the subject matter that you are intending to go public on. So right off the bat, there's a tell right there. The fact that I had to go through DOPPSR tells you I had a security clearance on the subject matter right there. So there's their first failure of poker face. And that's exactly what we set out to exploit. And so we came up with a reconnaissance mission. The reconnaissance mission looked like this. We were going to write a detailed manuscript as fiction through a ghostwriter. When we completed that, it was about 120,000 word manuscript. We broke that manuscript into actual sections that we called episodes because DOPPSR wants you to complete or submit the entire document. We submitted our first 20,000 words, our first 10,000 words, which was 20 pages. And within that first chunk of information, we included 4 types of information. And that information's purpose, again, was to inform us as to what they considered sensitive and the SMEs, which stands for subject matter experts, that they were outsourcing the information to.
Because what they do in the DOPPSR process is they send it out to all of the agencies that might be affected by you going public on something,
yes,
even in a fictionalized manuscript.
Yeah.
And they say to them, is there anything in here that needs to be redacted to protect national security?
That's correct. And it could be, you could present it to them as fact or fiction. It doesn't matter the context.
But more importantly, if it's protecting national security and it's redacted, it has to be a legally authorized program, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. So this is what we use to set up our 4 categories of information that I want to get through with you. Category 1, we included in that manuscript information we knew was classified, that we were privy to. And we knew that was patently classified on a very high level. Information category number 2 was information that was classified, but we knew only existed within the hearts and minds of the operators that were at the fingertips of that operation. Information category number 3 was information that was classified, but you may be surprised to learn was already in the public domain and open source. Because of the nature of the internet, there are things that the DoD and its partners would say that shouldn't be out there, but it is anyway. So we put some of that in there. And then we had our 4th category information, which was the most fun, which was where we took a little liberty and went fishing. We took our information that we knew was compartmentalized, connected it with other information that were these fact islands we were aware of because of our, I won't say how, and then we took our own creative liberty at connecting those 2 dots through a particular pathway as to why that might exist, and filled that space with other fictional classified information.
What happened?
6 months later, it took 6 months, we came back with 7 pages of redactions of all 4 categories.
Wow. So 1, that confirms there is a classified program. relating to this information.
Yes.
Wow.
Now there was a counterplay here. So although that was informative, I have to tell you, when they came back, our intention was now that reconnaissance mission having bared fruits was now going to inform how we went back and edited. Remember, this was the first 20 pages of a multi-page. I would say the first 10,000 words of a 120,000 word manuscript. We were then going to take that information and write around it in order to extract more intel through the DOPPSR process.
So you were running a counter surveillance operation against the very organizations.
That's a red team's best tool right there.
You were doing OPP4, opposition
you play
force.
3, 4, 5-dimensional chess. So you play multi-dimensional chess.
So even though they know you and your team were thinking about publishing something, they don't know that you're speaking publicly on national television about the legacy program.
That's a good question. No, they don't, but it doesn't mean I was limited to do that, because I have to tell you about the counterplay. So there is although they have no poker face, they're in a really tough spot, because not redacting information means that if they just chose, hey, this is sensitive, but we're not going to redact it. Well, now obviously that makes it into the public domain. But by redacting it, they prove that it's sensitive. So they have no idea as to how you acquired the information. They know based on your security clearance and your background, because it had to be submitted under my official name. It's a social security number and my record in order to get triggered. And that's how they know what SMEs to send it to. The SMEs who I worked for squashed all kinds of stuff. Then I went to one of the other SMEs I worked for. They squashed their stuff, and it came back with all these squashings in the form of black ink. Now, let me keep going, because the counterplay for them would have been to let certain information go so that it could be formally categorized as not sensitive and the fictional liberties taken by an author of a fictional book. So they could do that. They could have done that, but we didn't really see that. What they did do, however, was they got a sense, they got onto us. They figured out what we were doing, and they said, stop, you cannot submit anything else. You have to submit the whole manuscript. And we told them, well, that is the whole book. We're going to release this like episodes of a special. This is the whole season, but we're going to release it in episodes. So we have to send it to you 10,000 words at a time, because that's how it's going to be released. And they were kind of caught there, and they didn't quite know how to respond. So I can tell you that since then, and this was 2022, I believe in January when we first submitted the manuscript, and they haven't gotten back to us on the rest of it. It's still sitting there.
Do you think that there are people in private aerospace who think that it's inevitable that eventually this story is going